I'm AJ Springer. I'm joined by my co-host Noah Vieira, and this is Talking Providence. This week,
I like that intro.
This week we are talking about our favorite topic, the best topic. There is no better topic than rest. And if we were doing it right, we shouldn't even be talking about it in the first place.
Yeah, so guys, this is a real short one. We're just gonna do nothing for this time and just end it right now. No, I'm just kidding.
Someone's probably thinking we already do nothing.
I don't do anything on a daily basis, except for think about, what I want to do next. But Sunday's my rest day, and there's no reason other than it just happened that way. Like Monday starts the week, so then it's 6-day week, and then we wind up with Sunday. But it's an interesting discussion on, when you should be resting, right? Because I noticed it this week because I pushed myself a little harder than I usually would, because I've now rotated in running to my weekly schedule. So trying to do 12 miles a week kind of thing. So 4 3-mile runs, kind of 4 days, but we'll see how it goes. But I felt on Thursday, today, absolutely just toasted, and didn't want to do anything for an entire hour, and just sat there burnt. And it's interesting that you have to consider where your body's at. And that's one of the big things I've come to think about with rest is when your body tells you it needs a nap, it's going to tell you it needs a nap. And you got to take those naps, okay? Don't just have a coffee. I don't know. What do you drink to boost yourself up?
Coffee, Monster, Diet Coke.
Yeah, no. Do not do the Monster. I'd rather you do black coffee. But yeah, so that's one of those things of once you start really hitting one of the other pillars, which is exercise, rest becomes a whole lot more important. Because there's no way to rebuild and reestablish what you've gained other than just taking a day where you just sit there, or 2 days, or 3 days. I don't really care what it is. You just need to be doing something and then pausing to look back and give yourself a break to refresh and be ready for the next push. And that's really the art of doing nothing, is not actually doing nothing, but allowing yourself to be ready for the next week of events, the next chain of events, the next incremental steps to making yourself better.
Agreed.
Do you have any thoughts?
Well, starting off at the most fundamental level, rest will not be important to you if you don't do anything.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're already just resting all the time. So the idea is you take some things that are important to you, you're working hard on them, and it's actually as part of the long-term strategy in doing a great job. The short-term tactics involve rest because you need to be recovered to be at the top of your game, and just burning the midnight oil every single night is going to lead you directly into the ground, and then good luck. Now, there are one day where maybe you don't really
try and
do
keep
much.
it singular.
A recharge day, a Sunday, which is all good.
Yep.
And then there's the rest and sort of some of the balance. That's probably another one that comes in here within your week, where you have to schedule it so that if you're pushing really hard on one front, You have to lay off on the other front. Big problem that I've run into, which is very common and I'm sure will resonate, is you want to do everything at once. You want to be the strongest guy in the gym. You want to lose weight. You want to run a marathon. You want to do it all at the same time. And you're always going to be better off by prioritizing and executing, which we are taking from our friend Jocko Willink, who, shout out, I made my roommate Joe read his book, Extreme Ownership. So if you want to learn more about prioritizing and executing, that's where to go. But in your case, Noah, as we were discussing, or you were discussing, saying that you are incorporating running, you have your jiu-jitsu, and you have your weight training. So I hope when you're doing these things that you've decided which one is the most important to you, and you're structuring these other activities to support your main goal rather than pushing too hard on all three of them and ending up a worse athlete for it. Not to be scary or anything.
Yeah, no, and that's like a huge thing, right, to think about is I like the way you phrased it, where it's you have to prioritize and you have to go incremental steps. And that's the way we've been breaking down everything, right? But in the idea of rest is really important, especially when you're doing exercise. And when you decide to start, you can't just say, I'm going to just do exercise and just hit everything. So I started very small with just swimming twice a week. And then the next week I went 4 times that week. And then by the end of the month, I was going, 6 times a week. And then I threw in 2 days a week of weight training. And really the swimming was just to increase cardio to allow me to be better in the gym, to like actually, lose weight and, be overall healthier. So the gym became the main focus, and then it basically switched, and swimming became like 4 days a week, and the gym was 6. But now jiu-jitsu is kind of taken its, I don't want to say rightful place, but it's top tier place. And I'll sacrifice not going to the gym that day as long as I'm, if that's going to allow me to go to jiu-jitsu for the night, rather than pushing myself in the gym and then doing jiu-jitsu. And running I've now put in just to increase stamina, which I don't know if it's going to work. That's the thing. So like running's more of a test to see if increasing my cardio and stamina there will transition to jiu-jitsu, because it's a very different, I don't want to say exercise, but it's a very different way that your body is like pushed. If that makes any sense. You get really, really tired really fast, and then you need that break.
Yep, it's a different modality, right? I mean, so you see with fighters who they go through an entire training camp and they're running or biking or whatever it is. They do a ton of cardio and they're still able to gas out in the ring. It's a different type of endurance that you need. However, ultimately the base of any form of endurance is that long form, steady state running. The wider the base, the taller the peak. Same deal.
Yep.
But knowing that it's not going to directly contribute to sort of the type of endurance that's necessary in, say, jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Now, something interesting is, and this is, again, a point that cuts across all of the pillars that we talk about and think about, is as you start incorporating more things into your life, because they make you feel good and they give you purpose, and that's ultimately just what we're doing here, just finding what we're supposed to be doing. You have to understand the place of activities and actions, but as well as rest. Because, as I learned in high school, there's something called diminishing marginal returns. So, for example, I really like lifting weights. I love it. And at one point when I was 16 years old, I wanted to lift weights 6 days a week because I just loved going to the gym. I was addicted to it. And my coach, every program he always wrote was just 3 days a week. Just go in the gym, do your stuff 3 days a week, pretty minimalist. And I was always pushing back on that. Guess what? Fast forward, I find out that 3 day a week program I was doing was way more effective than the 6 days because I was just lighting myself up every time I went to the gym. So if you are going to take the approach, and this is more common in something like jiu-jitsu where the frequency is more important, the more you do it, the better you're going to get. Within those sessions, you have to peel back. You cannot go balls to the wall every single day and expect good results. You're going to break down. So there's a sacrifice. If you can't turn the engine off, if you're go, you're only going to be able to do things a couple times a week. That's what you're going to have to do to limit yourself. Otherwise, learn to have restraint. Competition is competition. Training is training. Treat that as it may be. Same goes for work too, right?
Yeah, and that's one that we have to think about because right now we're just talking about rest in the terms of fitness and the way it interacts with that pillar. But you also have to think about it with work. It's an important part, right? If you sit there and you're just constantly thinking about work, focusing on work, doing work, your level of work's going to diminish, right? If you're just always at work, always sitting there at the computer screen, like I don't know what you're doing, or if you're always, let's say you work construction, you're always just on the job, just nonstop, you just never take a break, then the speed in which you can do these things, the level of focus which you can do these will just drastically reduce. And it's something that I notice is if I'm just absolutely, I notice it in school especially, if you're just absolutely just crushing assignments and just whipping through them, you start losing kind of touch with reality, and then you start losing touch with the purpose. And sometimes if you don't take that break, when you come back in the morning, because like eventually you're going to fall asleep, but when you come back the next time to look at it, you're like, wow, I can't believe I wrote this. It's not really the most effective. And then the next day after you've had that rest, you've had that break, now you can think clearly again. And that's a really important part that we're not, or I mean we are now, but like we didn't really touch on, that's I think valuable to think about, is because even if you're not working out, right, but you're just working, workout can be a form of your rest for the work, but then you still need an actual rest just in general for your brain to shut off. And that can come in a lot of different ways.
Yep. And just on the point of work, the same way that physical training is, and not in everyone's case, but in many cases, I'll use myself as an example. There are things in my day, in my week, or in my month that are very important. More important than some of the other, I guess, typical work that I do. And so if you treat everything as the Super Bowl event that you have to go super hard at, and you want to show up every day and grind, then when it's time to actually perform in what matters, you're going to hurt yourself. And an extension of that, and this is what you typically see in school, is you associate work with just grinding. And so it's a switch you have to turn on because it's painful. It takes a lot of effort. So during the course of a semester, you're less incentivized to work because work is going to be a grind. But the trick is, if you can learn how to just sort of coast when things are easy, not do nothing, but just get the minimum amount done, because ultimately, why would you do more than that during times when it's not necessary. Tim Ferriss talked about this in the 4-Hour Workweek, but it's the concept of just in case versus just in time information. And largely a lot of what we do will be just in case information. The books you read,
Yep.
the work that you do, but really the difference maker is that just in time information. It's that effort that actually leads to something in front of you. It's the timely reading of a book where it's something that you're actually working on and can apply. That is the force multiplier. So just keeping that in mind. And then number 2 is I have tried some of the meditation stuff, okay? But I won't talk about it because it has not been for me yet. But what I do is I walk every day. We talked about this. There's no headphones involved.
Yeah.
And you just walk. And I've seen this pick up on Twitter recently. People are discovering it, which is hilarious because obviously it's something that's been around for, well, just forever. It's one of the first things you learn to do as a human being. But the act of just walking with no distractions, you go for a 20-minute walk. You'll be shocked at all the random thoughts that you have floating around your head that you didn't even know about that are causing you stress as you sit at your desk, distracted and unable to deal with them. And then B, once you get through that, the amount of great ideas that you have. Bring a notepad, bring your phone if you're able to stay disciplined, and write some of those ideas down, and you'll be shocked.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Another one that's really interesting is the idea of like gratitude. And it's not really meditation. It's more or less just sitting there and daily looking at what you are thankful for. You know, where have you seen positive things in your life? Then you can also write down like things that you would like to happen. And then you can look back and say, hey, these things have happened. And it's like a really refreshing way. It's a different form of rest, right? But it's a really refreshing way of like taking time to pause and look at your life. And there's like actually some decent studies on it, on how it actually produces like a better outlook on life. It makes you happier. It makes your mental health way better. And that's something that's actually I've always found very useful when it comes to clearing the mind and realizing that, you know, no matter how bad the day seems or how ineffective it seems like it was, you take that time to actually like sit down and just collect your thoughts and look at all the positive in life. And you can do the same thing on your walk, right? You're sitting there and you're just mentally just sitting thinking to yourself. You're not talking to anybody. You're not being flooded with information from an outside source. It's only internal information. And you're having to learn how to deal with that, internalize it, and realize what it's saying. So that's one that's always helped me with rest is sitting there and looking at the positive things and being kind of thankful for those, and then assessing what else would I like in my life, and then kind of seeing what happens there.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the ideas that I had over the summer that relates to this, because I mean, look, like, I don't think we're going to have anyone argue with us that gratitude is just going to be a good thing to practice. And whether you have a formal or informal process, it doesn't really matter as long as you do it. One of the things to keep in mind or to think about is specifics. If you're having trouble sort of thinking about it, don't go broad. Go really specific. And what I've done is I try and think of people in the past who have helped me in one way or another. So a lot of that time will come down to teachers, it could be friends, it could be parents, but something specifically that they did for you, because that's going to have more an effect than simply writing, you know, I'm grateful for this cup of coffee, even though you might be, and that's perfectly okay. But you can also dive into the specifics, and that's cool.
Yeah. It's also interesting to look at why. You know, why are we grateful for that? Why is like when you're on your walk and you think of a good idea, right? Why is it a good idea? Is it because I thought of it when my head was clear? Well, then maybe there's something there, right? Like if you're clearing your mind, which is really why we're resting, right? Is to refresh and have a clear look on what we want to accomplish for the next. Why we have a rest day is to accomplish the next week. Why we have rest in our day is so that we start the next day ready to go. And it's interesting that no matter how much we perfect systems in life, there's nothing that actually will stop us from having to need to sleep. Like our bodies need sleep, and you can take as much caffeine as you want. At some point, your body is just gonna just collapse, and you're gonna actually have real rest. Like there was this study that I was learning about. I can't remember where it was that I was learning about it, but it was that they would wake people up. I think it was in one of the psychology classes I took. They would wake people up in this test subject right before they hit REM sleep. So that's when you do most of your dreaming, and that's where you experience like a different form of rest. So you have like, surface level sleep, and then you go to deep sleep, and then you go to REM, and then you come out of it and you restart the cycle. And basically they would wake them up right before the REM sleep would happen every time. And it's interesting that your body doesn't need deep sleep, and it doesn't need just like the initial sleep. I can't remember what the term was for it. But after a while of them never being able to achieve REM sleep, their body needed it so much that, and this is like dreaming and stuff, which is another thing that we're talking about, right? Is having alone time with your thoughts, but their body would instantly just go right into REM sleep. They would skip because there's 4 cycles of sleep. I remember that much. I'm not a great student, but there's 4 cycles. REM's the last one, or there's 4 cycles in the cycle, and REM's the last stage. And they would skip all 3 and just go right to REM after, might have been a week, might have been a month. I can't remember how long the study was, but it was just an interesting thing that our body needs this level of rest and decision making and dreaming and having self-reflection and being alone with your brain just to think. It's just an interesting concept, right? Because who thinks about why we need rest? We just think about the fact that I get tired and I have to go to sleep, and it might be 11 o'clock, it might be 2 a.m. Like, I don't know what your bedtime is, but everybody gets tired and then goes to sleep.
Yeah, there's a lot of chatter now too, because we were lucky enough to sort of miss it, but in our earlier years of university, towards the end of high school there as well, there was like a lot of hustle culture. That was like a big thing. It's like who can work harder. And nowadays, at least when I look at my feed, the old Twitter, there's a lot of people just talking about the importance of getting sleep for productivity, for fat loss, for regulating your mood, your hormones, just like a number of things. So we are getting back to a point where I think it's more mainstream now that people are just accepting that they need to rest. And sort of along those lines too, like there's 2 points I'll make here. One of my favorite strength coaches, Charles Poliquin, he, I believe, used to take off. He had a very successful coaching business. He would train Olympic athletes, a couple hockey players in there. And he would take off like 3 months out of the year. He just wouldn't work, because that was part of his cycle to recharge, so that those other 9 months, he was on point. And not everyone has the luxury of doing something like that, but lesson in there, right? Number 2 is Pavel Tsatsouline, another one of my favorite strength coaches. I can't find the exact quote, but the most important thing that I learned from him is about cycling. So human beings are cyclical in our adaptation. We can't maintain peak output for extended periods of time. You need to build up to a peak and then take off stress, right? Because ultimately, if you try and build up, you're going to crash. And so the same goes with what we're saying here with your work, with your training, with all of your pursuits. But another point in there is you only need to rest. You only need to take those deloads if you're working really hard. And there's tricks in there where he takes something like it's a kettlebell swing, and the protocol is called simple and sinister. But the idea is just by doing a moderate volume of swings, you never push super hard. The effort's always relatively easy. You're able to do that every single day, like clockwork, like brushing your teeth, he says. So
Yeah.
there are definitely things that you can do all the time, and you don't need to be cyclical with everything. But I mean, we're getting back to the points here where it's all about managing your output and effort and understanding at the end of the day, if you have this idea of the ideal you as this peak performing machine, and I mean, I've been there, I've tried it, you're going to end up very disappointed, my friend. It's going to suck.
Yeah. I'm going to take a little left turn, but what are your thoughts on cheat meals? Because like that's like a rest from the mundane, the normal, the trying to eat healthy. If you're trying to, whatever your goal is, you should never be trying to overdo anything. But what are your thoughts on the cheat day for eating?
Well, so cheat meal, cheat day, big distinction there. Cheat meal being one meal, cheat day usually being sort of an all-out buffet of craziness that shouldn't really transpire. I'm all for a cheat meal. I think, everyone's different with how many meals you might eat in a week. Personally, I'm probably call it 4 a day. Okay, so 4 times 7, 28 meals in a week. If I go 25 for 28, I'm good.
Yeah, I like those. I like those odds.
Right?
Do you stagger them throughout the week, or is it more heavily seated on one kind of 2-3 day period?
Yeah,
collected.
Mine is more pushed to the weekend. And the nice part is that there's no rules. You're allowed to do what you want, right? So I eat to perform during the week with what I need. I'm a little bit more, I guess, clean or cautious as that happens, because I know on the weekend I'm gonna I want to go out with my friends. I want to go out for some meals, whatever it is, and that's all good. But it's nice too because I front load a lot of my training between Monday to Friday. I'm a little bit lighter as far as training goes on the weekend, so I have that all out of the way, and by the time it's the weekend, I'm able to be flexible, and when I wake up and it's Monday and I jump back on the scale, there's not a lot of damage that's done. I will warn people though, if you so obviously my approach is pretty moderate, right? Nothing particularly crazy sounding there. Eat pretty good during the week. Take your foot off the gas on the weekend. If you try and do the super strict during the week so that you can have 2 cheat days on the weekend and go nuts, that is a horrendous situation. You may be able to make it to that next Friday and be back at where you were, but that Monday you're going to feel so bad, it's not even worth it. So being more moderate on that front.
Yeah. That's one thing I noticed with alcohol. I cut alcohol out basically completely, other than a cheat day. Not a cheat meal. It was like an 18-hour period, but once, in a while. But basically it was, alcohol is really, really bad for your recovery, right? So your rest day doesn't actually become a rest day. It's like a detraction day, and you don't recover on that rest day, and because your body's not trying to recover its muscles, it's just trying to recover from the fact that you just poisoned it that night. So that's one thing I've noticed is taking that out, because now you're punishing your body even more on the day that you're saying it's like your rest day. I'm partying, I'm doing something social. Not to say that drinking's bad or anything. Not to say it's good, just to say that's something I've been doing. But I do want to resurface to these cheat meals. What's your favorite? What's like your go-to? Like Dwayne The Rock Johnson has this like rock toast.
Yeah.
Which is basically a loaf of bread that he turns into French toast. But
yeah, I'm like a pretty big burger and fries guy. Some kind of variation of that.
Man, we used to go for burgers, man. Oh, yeah. We got to get back to Montreal. We need to go to that one spot.
Yeah. QDC Burger.
Oh, boy.
I will never forget that place.
Wow. Man, now I'm thinking about food.
I know, man.
This is not good. This is not good. It's past my eating time. But anyway. But yeah, no, that's one thing is to think about is it okay to have a day of rest in the cycle of what I'm doing? And as long as the rest is aiding your progression, your incremental steps, I think that's where we have to kind of assess, right? Whenever we're looking at it is what I'm doing going to help me progress further? And like one thing you said probably in the first podcast was, and you were quoting somebody where it was, if something's worth doing once, do it all the time. But if it's not worth doing once, don't ever do it. I probably butchered that, but like, close. You know what I mean? Like if it's not worth doing, if it's not going to help you progress, then it's just not really worth it, right? If it's going to help you because, you've been eating healthy and now you're like, oh, I can reward myself. So I have a reason looking forward to something, then you're fine. But once you start taking it to the point of, I work all week so I can negate those, it's the mentality I think that we have to look at. Why are we doing things? And then that's not a great mentality, because you're basically self-defeating, because then once you start reducing the output, you know what I mean? You're not working out as hard. You're not doing that. You miss a day, you get injured. I don't know what's going to happen, but now you're not able to keep up, but you still are interested in those foods, right? You're still interested in that pursuit of what I would call fake rest or, laziness.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we're right there. And it's funny because obviously most of what we like to talk to is about doing things, and more specifically doing things with a purpose. But one of the more important thoughts that I had as I was like, okay, I need to straighten myself out here, start working harder, start looking longer term with my goals and where I want to be and all of those things, was that life gets really boring when everything has to be done for a reason.
Yep.
So the better way to think about, or not the better way to think about things, but you have to have room to do things just for the sake of doing them, right? So one of the things I brought back which you know about, was fiction reading. I used to think that I couldn't read a fiction book because, reading's for my education. I have to learn. I have to read nonfiction stuff.
Yeah.
I have to read investing books, real estate books,
Self-benefit.
self-development,
Yeah.
all of that stuff, history, whatever it is. It has to be productive. And then I realized one day, I was like, no, it is okay just to read. Like, the act of reading is fine. And that was another thing.
Yeah.
I used to walk and be Mr. Podcast guy, audiobooks, at the gym, doing this, doing that. But it's like, you just like chill out. Okay?
Yep.
We're not talking about rocket science here, which is why it sounds like we're going around in circles. But like, that's the point of this. It's one to step back and just say, you know what? Sometimes who cares? Don't overanalyze things. Don't plan your cheat meals. Okay? Don't be thinking about and salivating over some cheat meal. Like, things will come up as they happen. Okay?
Yeah.
Don't get too excited. You wasted some time. You
think
ate too many calories. Whatever it is, relax your mind.
Yeah. I think that's an important part, right? Is learning to enjoy life. Learning to just take the moment. And we discussed this a lot. Like, we would discuss the ability to just go on a drive with somebody and just sit there and talk for 2 hours or whatever, or an hour. And there was no purpose of the drive other than just to spend time with another person, which is our social pillar. But also it is a way of resting. You're not sitting there trying to, like, there's no preconceived ideas of what we need to do. We don't need to accomplish anything. We're literally just driving to Starbucks, and we chose the one that's an hour and a half away. You know what I mean? Like, that's all we're doing. We're not even really going for the coffee. We're just going to exist and live life. And those are the moments that you can never plan for, because those are where you will find something new, right? It's like when you sit there and disconnect and just exist while you're on your walk, which is a great example, right? You'll have these great ideas because you're not sitting there bombarded trying to think of something. You're just thinking. You know what I mean? You're just doing something, but you're not doing it with any real goal. And I think that's a great point that you brought up, that we don't need a goal for everything. We don't need a purpose for, why am I going to get lunch with you? Why am I on this call with you? You know what I mean? Like,
why are we doing
we're
this
recording
podcast?
this, but
Yeah.
like, exactly. But it's not like we don't sit down other than, we're going to talk about rest and, we'll see what happens. But like, we're not actively trying to gain something from just chatting. It's discussions about what we're doing, right? And it's a really good way to decompress from the week or from the day. You can share the good things, you can share the bad things. And the social element, I think, is a really important part to this idea of rest.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that reminds me of some of my experiences with so-called networking. So sometimes you have a goal there. You have a job that you want, and there's people who are doing that job or who have done that job and are now in a higher up role within that group. And so you network, and those calls are all about positioning. You are a product. You have to figure out how to not commoditize yourself, how to add value, how to get your foot in the door, and it's all about strategy there. However, and this is funny because it goes back to when we're talking about working and just-in-case information versus just-in-time information, and how like you have to hammer into the just-in-time information. The just-in-case information is useless. But when you're in a position where you don't have a goal in mind, there's not a specific job you want, there's more networking to do there too. And this networking I'm referring to is called being a normal human being and having conversations, right?
Yeah.
So, for example,
Well, that's
there's a guy out in Calgary who runs a mid-market private equity firm. EBITDA values from, I think it's like $5 to $50 million, and we happened to cross paths on LinkedIn, and I just looked at what he was doing, and I was curious. So we talked for like an hour, and he ended up sending me a copy of his book, and it was all good. And I didn't go into that conversation stressed or anything because I had nothing that I really wanted to get out of it. Just being genuinely curious. And here's a secret, which I know that Dale Carnegie taught me, that we all actually know because we're born with it, is we really like talking about ourselves. I enjoy listening to the sound of my own voice right now and speaking. And so, guess what? If you ask someone to, hear about what they do, what they like about their job, what they don't like about their job, what they're working on, all that stuff, they're going to be interested in telling you. So, just go ahead. Like if you don't know what to say, or you're getting tangled up on this stuff, just ask people questions about their life. And then dig deeper on them. What do you like to do in your free time? Anything. Doesn't matter. They'll answer your questions. It's very rare that you'll be in a scenario where you ask someone a question about themselves, a genuine question, and they're going to shut you down super hard. It doesn't really happen unless you're, like probing, but you're not.
Yeah.
We're not probing for anything. You're not an interviewer.
We have no goal.
Yeah.
We're just talking.
No.
Yeah, no, it's such a good skill to have, right? And I think people respond best to that, right? Like if you got a message saying, "Hey, I want to talk about what you do because I want to work there." You're kind of you go into that conversation on the receiving end kind of skeptical, not like anything that they say now is just disingenuous, right? But where your approach is, where you come in and you're just like, I actually don't need anything from you. I just want to, talk, learn. Maybe I'll learn something new, but I have no real goal other than to get to know you. And it's wild what happens there. Like I've noticed my best ability to network and, get to know people has always come from the fact that I've never needed nor wanted a job. So anytime I'm talking to somebody, it's just, oh, like you do this, you're a lawyer. Oh, you're this. We'll just learn. Because like I have actually no interest in ever being a lawyer. But it's so interesting to see what they do, right? The deals that they kind of work on and how they do these things and how it moves. It's just fun, right? And but it's an important skill, right? Because now when, let's say you do need that job, you do need to know how to have a conversation. The most important thing is to not be awkward.
Exactly. And like when I think about characterizing awkwardness tends to come from a fundamental misunderstanding of your value as a person. So
yeah.
And this does tie into rest.
Ooh.
I promise you it does.
One sec. Let me just say something real quick, because I made up a quote because I don't know. I had my arm stuck somewhere, and I was like, "This feels awkward," and then I said, "Awkward is just something we're not familiar with yet." And that's my favorite quote that I came up with, and I like to tell people it. But like, it's really applicable in this situation. But now back to your thing.
So, I think a lot of what comes down to this sense of awkwardness is misunderstanding your value as a person. So the thing about you is, just as a person, you are good enough. And we talked about this on the first one.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay? If you don't have a job, if you don't train, if you don't learn, if you don't have a social life, it doesn't matter. You're still good enough. They're just being like table stakes is just being born, being on this planet. You are a valuable addition. And so,
what are the odds? Like 1 in 400 trillion or something is the chance of you being born.
Yeah, and all it's true. And then all of this
Wild.
all of this stuff that we talk about, where it should come from, is a place of love, because you understand you're already valuable, and so you want to take care of yourself. That's the idea of where it comes from, and that is why confident people are able to take rest days too, because they understand that their value is not tied to their work and training all the time and being that guy or girl. They're good enough already. So when getting back to the awkwardness in conversation, though, it's just understanding, like, a lot of the times if I feel awkward in a conversation, it's because I'm scared that I don't have value to add. It's like I'm the one probing, I'm interrupting, whatever it is. So trying to keep in mind that, you do have value there, and just by participating, you are adding value. So that's my ramble.
This is something we talked about, right? Like with old people, they might not, you know what I mean? Like you could be talking to a grandparent who didn't go to school, has no business experience, right? Like let's say that's what you're trying to get into. You're trying to be a finance guy or trying to be whatever. But they have none of that experience because, they worked retail. You know what I mean? So to them, they can't offer any tangible advice or benefit to you, right? That you would think about. But they just have so much experience, right? They've lived. And you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what they might be able to teach you, right? And you won't get that unless you take the time to realize that you have value because you're a person, but they also have value because they're a person. They have a life, they have stories that are going to help you. And not to try and get things, but like it's something that you can leverage. You can say, hey, let's just chat. You don't go in with anything, and you learn something new, and then you have a new story to think about. You have experiences that you didn't have to have. You have mistakes that you didn't have to make, that you've seen what happened there. That's kind of what we're talking about, right? Is things that we've noticed, and this is one thing that I have a friend of mine who's a little younger than me. And he watched the first 2 podcasts and has realized that he needs to start making incremental steps. And he keeps talking to me about it. He's like, I got to make my pillars. He's like, I got to have the pillars. And I'm like, well, make your own pillars. You can use our pillars. That's fine. But you can take your pillars and you can adjust them. I was like, as long as you have at least 3. You're fine, right? Like, but you want to have your pillars. You want to write them down. You want to start making very small incremental steps to just slowly better yourself, because you've already won the game, right? You were born. You now have the opportunity. It's like what Bill Gates says. It's like, if you're born poor, that's not your fault. If you die poor, that's your fault. And it's not to say tangible money wise, you're poor. Because I don't know if that's a great metric, like, oh, you only have X amount of dollars. I don't know if that's a great metric to measure if you're rich or poor. That'd be a good way to measure if you're rich or poor monetarily. But another quote I heard, which I think is really important, is, if you didn't show up tomorrow, would people miss you? That's a good sign of success.
Damn, that's cold.
If your life had value, then you were a success. Like if people would miss you because you didn't come to X. If people would miss you, then you were a success because you've now influenced people in a certain way and you're winning. Doesn't mean you're, the richest person in the world, but just because you had money doesn't mean you were successful, right? You could be a billionaire and die and have no friends, have nobody at your funeral, right? Just people who are just waiting for whatever handout they were going to get. And I would say that's a very unsuccessful life, a non-rich life. So that's step one, is realizing that because you're alive, you're now winning. You can start making these incremental changes because it doesn't really take a long time once you start making good, positive changes because the momentum just starts building. And the key is to keep that momentum building, you have to rest. But the one thing is a lot of people get stuck in this lazy standpoint. And, I made the joke last week where I was like, I have 22 years of it, but like genuinely, like I had a very lazy life. Like especially in my like early 20s, like early 20s. And like, late teens, just kind of chilling. No real desire to do anything. Like I would occasionally do a sport, but nothing serious. And like it's fine, like you get good experiences there, right? But you have to at some point realize that there's more to life than just existing. Like that's a step one, right? Is you're born. That's kind of like what everybody got, and they're now able to make these changes. But don't be lazy, right? Don't waste them.
Yeah. And as part of that too, this is actually one of our fraternity brothers. He made a speech and he was talking about his university career and essentially just how different times require you to be a different person. And, for his first couple of years of university, he was the party guy, and that was good. And he had great times, and it was awesome. Made a lot of friends, made a lot of memories. And then in third year, he realized that he wanted to get more serious about his career and pull his grades together, and that's what was important to him. So he became the library guy. And he was in there and studying and got his grades up and ended up getting a good job and all of that. But the point being is just because you are whatever you are now, or you've spent time doing it this way, it's like you don't need to stay that way. And obviously that's intuitive. But the truth is like I really think, at least in my experience, even earlier on, I've only ever really been like 3 months away from being a completely different person as far as habits go and focus. I saw that first with like a physical transformation. I saw it with school when I was like in grade 7, going from like grade 6 to grade 7, and like school became important because I went to private school and like grinding on that front. I saw it in university from being really driven there, but also having like my fun times and being carefree and like awesome, and having that flexibility. And this all comes back into the idea of balance and cycles, and it's just as part of being human. So just remembering that you're allowed to have different moments where you have different focuses. And this also ties into, this is something important that we actually touched on by accident, but we always seem to touch on the reversals of what we talk about. So in this case, we're talking about rest and incorporating rest into your everyday life, making sure that you work effectively rather than just grinding yourself down to the bone, and how some things you get to push hard on, other things you can ease off the gas, do them more frequently, whatever it is. As for your fun habits, your bad habits perhaps, I am much more on team, and I know you are because we had this conversation recently. I am much more on team of I get to work during the week. I don't drink because when I'm drinking, I'm celebrating with my friends. That doesn't mean you get to just go and get absolutely hammered every time you do it, but it's actually saving those moments for times when they're more important rather than letting that creep into your daily lifestyle. And I think that's an easy compromise too, where, you know, if you have a base layer of drinking and whatever other things you get up to, eating bad food and stuff, that's just detrimental. So rather, you know, like have times where you let loose, but for the most part, stay in the course, stay in the path. And that would be the reversal there. So rather than, you know, incorporating those into your daily life, like those are ones where you just push it into a box for the one-offs.
April 1st, we're going to Montreal.
Looking forward to it.
As I said, you know, like the thing is, right, you need to be able to live, right? You can't put yourself in these strict boxes of I must be the perfect human being, because that person does not exist at all. But you also need to have fun, right? So you want to be doing things that are positive on a daily basis. Make that your daily routine. But that being said, April 1st in Montreal, I guess I'll show up probably a little bit before that, and then I'll stay for a little bit later. But that weekend, that's going to be a fun one. And there's no reason to not drink and not, you know, go out for breakfast with you, because how often do I get to do that, you know, when we're just, you know, letting loose and seeing the boys, and there's a purpose behind it. And we just talked about, oh, you don't have to do everything with a purpose, but you're experiencing life there, and you have you're making memories, and it doesn't make sense to just, oh no, I'm not going to drink because I'm trying to be healthy. I'm not drinking generally because I'm trying to be healthy, but right now we're letting loose, and we need to have those times. And that's like another form of rest. It shouldn't be your weekly rest, but that's like another form of like mental rest, where you allow yourself to just be a person. And as we all know, all people are flawed, right? We all make mistakes. And that's just like part of being human, right? Is you wake up, you make a mistake, you do some good things, you go to bed, and if you sit there and reflect on the good things and the bad things that you did that day, the next day when you wake up, guess what? You now have a bit of a game plan as, I don't want to make that same mistake.
Just trying to have a good batting average, man. That's it.
Oh, yeah.
Just have a good batting average. And the beauty of that is it's all relative. If you're batting 300 now, you can look to bat 400, 500, but there's literally no point in comparing yourself to someone who has, you know, like a 900 batting average, because it's not you. So who cares?
Yeah.
Your job's to
and
get
it's
better.
really important. It's really important as well to look, and you touched on it. Like, I don't think you were planning on it, but you touched on it with the seasons, right? Also, don't worry about the season, right? Because right now it might feel like, oh, that person's doing so well, like they have such a great job, they, you know, are in such good shape, I'll never be there. It's like, well, if you make good decisions for the next 6 months, and you make very purposeful decisions that are pushing you forward to a goal to be just like that person, little thing is it works. It might not take 6 months. It might take a year. It might take 2 years. But in 2 years, now you're at the same place, if not better than where that person was. And it's important to understand that, right? Whenever we're comparing ourselves, because there's no point. We're not them. They're not us. We can have a goal, but we can't have what they have right now. But if we put in the work, we can get it eventually. We can get something similar. We can be what we want to be. And it's just a matter of taking small steps every day forward.
Yeah, and because we like to throw in our AJ Springer truisms at the end. I mean, your core competency is being yourself. So automatically by trying to be someone else, you're taking away from your most valuable asset, which is a mistake.
Mistake.
If I look at myself and what I'm up to, I mean, I'm podcasting right now. None of my friends would be interested in doing something like this. I would think it's crazy, but I'm in the situation where it just so happens that me and my friend Noah, this is what we want to do right now, so we're doing it. And obviously I could spend this time doing, I don't know, studying the Breaking Into Wall Street guide, if that's what I wanted. And if that was me and I was doing that, great, I'm crushing it. But this is what I'm doing to bet on myself right now. And that's what you got to do. Bet on yourself. Work hard. Rest.
Yeah.
Do it all.
I want to start, not right now, but at some point, a segment of this where we can get questions on Twitter, and we're going to call it Q&AJ.
That is horrible.
And I think it's going to be great.
Oh my God. Well,
no, because it'd be cheesy enough, and you add such value, right? Because that's such a good point that people don't consider, right? Is
do not commoditize yourself.
You have value, and don't sit there selling yourself short, right? That's I think the biggest point, and we talked about confidence in the first episode, right? Why are you less confident? Confidence is only a mental thing, right? It's not like, oh, I'm born with, out of 100, 10 out of 100 for confidence, 10 points, and I can maybe go up to 12. You know what I mean? It's just how I view myself, right? Self-perception.
Yeah.
And selling yourself short is the biggest thing.
And the best thing you can do to get confident is to bet on yourself, which, brings us back around to what I was doing this morning, which is I was training some Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. First day.
First day.
First day.
Guess what? I woke up this morning and I didn't want to go. I had my waiver signed. I had talked to the program director. Everything was all set up for me. They had my gi wash and everything. And, the coach is waiting for AJ to show up. And I didn't want to go. Because
just do it.
I know that if I went, I was going to suck. And I was going to have to meet a bunch of new people. And I was going to be the worst one there. And it was going to be really annoying. And it felt like everyone was going to be looking at me. But the point is that you just do it. Right?
Yeah.
And then by doing it, guess what? The rest of my day was a cakewalk. Easy. Get over those hurdles and you feel better. And as you keep going, as I'm going to, I mean, it's just that's it. Just betting on yourself. And then part of that is knowing that you are going to suck at things that you try. And that's perfectly okay. But anyways, I'm digressing. I wanted to make it selfish because I want everyone in the world to know that I train BJJ and that one day I'm going to armbar you in the street or mounted triangle or something. That's it. It's just posturing. But I'm happy we got this one done.
Yeah.
Resting. It's a tough topic.
But yeah, no, it's important. It's important to understand though, right? like right now you're getting into this and you wake up from your rest and you don't want to do things, right?
Yeah, man. Gotta do it though.
You might need to have a better rest. I'm not saying that you're having bad rest, right? And this is why we're going to get into, not a sponsor, Whoop. No, I'm just kidding.
If we had a Whoop strap sponsor, you gotta check out there's Corey Gregory from it was Muscle Farm, but his new company is, I gotta get this up. Corey Gregory had an awesome
Wearable?
no, he had an awesome podcast. Corey Gregory, Max Effort. I think it's Max Effort Muscle. Yeah. Corey Gregory, Max Effort Muscle. He had a podcast. I think he has got another one going on now. But that guy spits fire, and he had the Whoop strap sponsor. Oh man, though he crushed it with the Whoop. The Whoop ads were insane. So good.
Whoop is a really good thing, and I'm not saying Whoop specifically, but like Whoop. They're known as the best.
Accountability, man.
But they just not to like sell them or anything, but it's basically a thing that will tell you how well you've rested. You wake up and you look on your app on your phone, and it tells you, oh, you're at, you put this much strain on your body yesterday, and your rest was effective enough where now you're ready to go. You're 100%, or you're only 92%. So like now all right, I probably should get a little bit more rest. And you can set ways where it wakes you up when you're at 100%, which is something that's really interesting. Man, right?
This is a crazy ad.
I know, but I'm not trying to do an ad, but I'm just talking about like ways to help yourself, right? Because we talked about accountability, right? But this is like a really easy way to get accountability for how well you're resting.
Should we do a quick real sales pitch for the Whoop strap, which is that prospects are able to bond with them over their problems, not your solutions. The problem is that you don't get enough rest. Why is that a problem? If you don't get enough rest, you're going to be tired. If you're tired, you're not going to want to train. If you don't train, then you're not going to get the natural energy there to get through your day. You're going to get fat. You're going to be weak. If you're not training, it's going to make it harder to stick to your nutrition. If you're not sticking to your nutrition, your job performance is going to suffer. You're going to make less money, and you're going to be generally unhappy. Now, what are the alternatives? You could use some sort of archaic form of tracking, like you could just try and do 8 hours, but that doesn't give you any of the information that you want to know, and it's weird. Yeah. It's annoying, and it's not objective. Or you get the Whoop strap.
You could. And then you could just fully reverse that, right? If you want to be happier and have better job success.
The Whoop strap.
And,
will guide you to get the exact rest that you need so that you can perform at the highest levels, so you can be in the best shape possible with the most money, with everything else that you want. Anyways, just had to. Yeah. Big day
anyways,
on the sales pitch tomorrow.
Yeah. But as we said, none of us are sponsors for this. None of us actually are sitting there saying, oh, you need to get this. But it's just something to think about, right?
You need to get it.
You can use technology to help you out with this rest element, right? It doesn't have to only be, oh, I think I'm getting enough rest. I feel like I'm okay. I don't feel tired. I feel tired. I'm not sure why. It makes it really easy when you start, leveraging this tech. And, it's not only this company, right? There's a lot of other companies that do it. But just something to think about. I think this went well.
I think so
too. I think we talked about rest well.
Rest is a tough one. I will say, obviously. Yeah. Look, it's gonna end up being a little bit convoluted because that's just the nature of what we're talking about. However, I hope we can get some value out of this one, and I'll be doing a little type up. I think I have to get the other one first, but then I'll be on to this one, so those will be out on the Substack. Where are we at right now? Are we on YouTube? Is that the deal?
Yeah, we're on YouTube. we're sorting out Spotify and
Spotify's got a lot.
Apple
Spotify's
Podcasts.
got a lot of issues going on right now. Not related to us.
Yeah. Not saying that we got into podcasting when, right before, but
I'm having a deja vu moment as if I've talked about this. And then next week.
Yeah, what's going on next week? What are we talking about?
I think I'm a little bit back and forth, but you know what?
Well, what could it be? Give us a tease.
You know what I'd like to do? I would like to talk about physical training and the holy grail of fitness, which is training, nutrition, and accountability.
And BJJ.
So maybe we'll talk about that. And till then.
Cool.
Catch us on the
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next Friday. We're going to try and be better on our Twitter and stuff. That's something we're working on. We're also trying to come out with a little TikTok of our little bits. But have a good one. We'll see you next Friday. This one should be out this Friday. I mean, when you're watching it. So.
All right. It's a pleasure, brother.
Yeah, always a pleasure.